My favorite part of house sitting is reading people's diaries. Take my latest gig, The Wrights. Mid-40s, married 2 years. They weekend in Malibu once a month, which gives me plenty of time to snoop around. I thought I'd hit the jackpot. The last 5 entries in Mrs. Wright's diary read like a Mexican telenovela. She married her husband for money, so no surprises there. The house was frigging gigantic, and it wasn't long before their relationship soured. Unfortunately, Mr. Wright's lawyers had drawn up a snazzy prenup, so she was stuck. For the next few months, she documented the decay of their marriage. In the brief moments I spent with them, I noticed snarky comments and scornful glances. They secretly hated each other. Mrs. Wright's entries became more and more aggressive, until finally one ended with, "Sometimes I just wanna kill my husband." Spicy, I thought, munching popcorn, while spread out across their king-sized bed. You can imagine my reaction when Mr. Wright had his accident a few weeks later. There was a fault with the brake line on his Ferrari, apparently. I was suspicious, but had 2 problems. First, I had no evidence Mrs. Wright was actually involved. And second, I couldn't reveal what I knew without basically admitting to half the neighborhood. I read their diaries. So I hatched a plan. Sooner or later, Mrs. Wright would need a house sitter. Confessing to a murder in her diary would be pretty stupid, but maybe I'd find something the police could use. Then I'd say I only read it because I was already suspicious. 6 weeks later, I got the call. Of course, Mrs. Wright, I'd be happy to house sit. I waved her off, then dashed into the bedroom. She had switched hiding places, but I eventually found the diary at the back of her walk-in closet. Surprisingly, there'd only been 1 entry since my previous visit. It read, "I killed my husband." From out in the bedroom, I heard a creak. I shouted, "Hello," and when nobody answered, I continued reading. I've gotten away with it. The police don't suspect a thing. There's just one loose thread, the house sitter. 2 weeks after the accident, I found my diary face down, when I always leave it face up. If she went to the authorities, it could ruin everything. My stomach twisted like a towel getting wrung out. But I've got a plan. I'll hide my diary in the walk-in closet and pretend to leave. Then, when she goes looking for it, I'll close the door and fly to Malibu. The door jams and can't be opened from the inside. I've taken the liberty of installing a signal blocker, and even told the pool cleaner to take a few weeks off. My stomach twisted even further. She'll never get out alive. When I return, I'll dispose of the diary, then call the police, easy peasy. Before I could react, the closet door swung shut. Then everything went dark. My little brother Ali lives in the basement. He is never allowed out. Mom says, if he escaped, it would be the end of us. She says that a lot. I was too young to remember when Ali was born. But I know something bad happened to my sister, and that's why we keep him in a cage. I go downstairs to feed him 3 times a day. Sometimes he's really angry. He'll even slam against the bars and try to escape. Other times, he's just sad. I think Ali likes me. Whenever my parents are busy, and I'm sure they won't find out, I stay in the basement to play. There's a ball, and he really likes it when we toss it back and forth. I never get too close to the cage. Mom would be furious. if she caught me doing that. Mom gets angry a lot. This one time, while I was playing in the basement, I heard her come home early and had to run upstairs. Ali got upset because playtime was cut short. Mom heard him scream and made a face. She said if the neighbors heard, people would ask questions, which might lead to them finding out what he was, which again would lead to them letting him out of his cage because they don't understand. And that would be the end of us. One time, when Mom and Dad were away, I heard Ollie cry. He was really loud. Even though I'd already fed him, I went downstairs to check he was okay. When the lights flicked on, Ali pushed himself against the bars. He was crying a lot, and his cheeks were really wet. I think he felt extra lonely that day. And since I really didn't think he'd hurt me, I got close to the cage. I went slowly, shuffling my feet, holding one arm out. Ali pushed his arm past the bars. He wanted some company, I think. And I could understand why, because there is times when I get sad and really need a hug too. All of a sudden, we were holding hands. He didn't attack or try to hurt me. So I used a broom to get the key off the wall and let him out of his cage. But then, as we ran around the room giggling, I heard someone scream. It was Mom. She came down and threw Ollie back into the cage and locked it. Then she dragged me upstairs, where we waited in silence until Dad got home. After Mom explained what happened, Dad looked super disappointed, and I felt rotten. Dad said it brought him shame to have such a sinful daughter who disobeyed her parents' instructions. He said my sister succumbed to sin too, and that's why Ali is such a monster, and why if they didn't hide him, it would be the end of us. Then he said I had to be purged of wickedness, just like my sister. Some people I see on the internet infuriate me. They can be plain disrespectful, others even abusive. Their actions hurt and harm others, whether through their ignorance, their lack of courtesy or care for others' well-being. Sometimes, such people become infamous on the internet overnight. It's usually because someone caught them in the act. Of course, those people may get jeered at online. They may lose their jobs and others' respect because of it. But they're still out there, living their lives, not doing anything to make amends, never getting their just desserts. People like that shouldn't be allowed to continue in their ways. But what can one do about that? We can't just build a mass rehabilitation center to teach them to be decent human beings. Even so, there's an alternative to that. Cutting those horrible people's lives short so they don't cause any more harm. And that is exactly what I do. My last target was someone caught assaulting another person, who reminded them to wear their mask. The one before that was exposed for mistreating their employees. And my current target was a man who went viral for hurling slurs at groups of girls on the street. I tracked his location, waited until dark, and then scaled up his apartment window. Peering through the glass, I checked my phone. Yes, the man inside was the same as the one in the video. Then, I unlatched the window, crawling into the apartment. I often wished I could kill these kinds of people, slowly and painfully, in some form of karmic punishment, but that would get me cut all too easily. Instead, I settled for a simple slash at their throat. It was quick, though a bit bloody. Nothing a little hydrogen peroxide wouldn't fix. That night, a sexist pig of a man was gone from this world. That morning, his wife would wake to find him sprawled on his bed, stale blood overflowing onto the sheets. And my job for the day was done. A few days later, I was looking forward to having a peaceful date night with my girlfriend. But when I rang the doorbell, I was met with silence. She said she'd be at home the entire day, and she wouldn't ignore me like that. After around 10 minutes of waiting, I forced the door open. What met me was the all too familiar stench of fresh blood. I rushed through her house, searching for her. She was sprawled on her bed, throat slit with a short knife, the same way I had killed that man just a few days earlier. The only thing that was different was the card that lay under her pillow, written in a neat cursive font. "This is revenge for killing my husband." I was seated at the kitchen table, focused on my coloring book as my mom prepared bacon and eggs for breakfast. "All right, hun, breakfast is ready." I glanced up at my mother and saw some strange, glowing threads interwoven to a singular point, a burning flame that emanated from my mother's chest. Perplexed and fascinated by the strange phenomenon, I plucked a loose, unfastened strand, and the plate fell from Mother's hands, shattering on the floor. She flexed her trembling fingers several times before smiling at me. Mommy made an oopsie. I think I intuitively knew at that moment that those threads somehow were linked to one's well-being. Of course, I would learn soon after that it wasn't just her that had such a smoldering flame and luminescent lifelines. No, everyone had them. Some of the flames were bigger, the threads forming something more akin to rope. Others were embers, loosened strings barely holding on. It was in 5th grade that I saw what happened when the flame died out. My history teacher was up at the board having us review for our final when I saw it. Her life was hanging by a thread. The ember in her chest vanished when it snapped, and the light in her eyes faded simultaneously, leaving her little more than a crumpled heap on the ground. Everyone in the class screamed in shock and concern. It was later determined that she had died of cardiac arrest. My cat Mousie was the next to go. She was attacked by a dog on my 12th birthday. My mom found her maimed at the front door in the evening, her fur riddled with saliva and nasty bite marks near her throat. Through tear-filled eyes, I saw the last few individual strands dissipate into thin air. The first week of high school was dreadful beyond measure. Being bullied by catty girls tends to wear on one's patience. The culprit for all this abuse I endured was at the hands of Belinda Thomas, the main varsity cheerleader. Everyone loved her, and she had a penchant for picking on the weak and feeble. The rumors spread from her lips like a disease. The boys would leer, and girls made offhanded comments towards me. When I caught Belinda's spray paint on my locker, I did what I needed to do with little remorse. Her soul was as radiant as a bonfire. The threads that anchored her to this world were among the strongest and most vibrant that I had seen yet. The rage, built up by the constant bullying, exploded as I yanked them from her body, watching her fall to the floor. Her delicate French-tipped fingernails snapped as she clutched at her chest, eyes begging and pleading for help before the fire vanished. Mouth foamed over like the feral bitch she was. It was unnerving when I discovered my gift, but I've since learned the world is unfair. I could be the balance, the seamstress that cuts the thread, the wind that extinguishes the flame. My cleaner is awesome, and she comes and cleans my apartment, and then just goes home. She is a soldier that works through it. I have had cleaners in the past that just kept on complaining about something and made things awkward, while I just wanted them to clean my apartment and then just go home. This new cleaner of mine doesn't have the need to converse or have any social interaction, and she just gets stuck into the cleaning. She is awesome, and I have given her raises because of that. No matter how messy my apartment is, she just cleans it and makes it feel new again. A couple of weeks ago, I was having a party in my apartment, and there were alcohol and drugs. Then when I awoke, it was early Monday, and the sun was rising. There was also a dead body on the floor, and my hand was still touching the knife that stabbed my visitor to death. I couldn't remember who he was, and it was a wild weekend of partying. I was just so silent, as I didn't know what to think or even what to do, and I just quietly listened to the birds outside and the calm wind rustling through the trees. I listened to the normal everyday conversations of the outside world of people who have never killed anyone. Then I heard my cleaner coming into my apartment, as she has a copy of my key. That's when fright entered my body, as she was just a cleaner and not a murder scene cleaner, and I was terrified at what she was going to do. She just came in and looked at me and the dead body, and that silence bonding us both. She just got sucked into cleaning my apartment. She was quite strong, and she cleaned away the blood and got rid of the body by putting it into a bag, and I was just watching her doing it all. She didn't say a word, as she didn't care, and in that moment, I loved her so much. She just did her job cleaning my apartment, no matter what messy state it was in. She even cleaned me and washed off all of the blood on my body while I was still in silent mode. Then she just walked out with all of the mess, and my apartment was as good as new. My cleaner is just awesome. A change of clothes, keys, shoes, duffel bag, cash, so he couldn't trace her. She couldn't risk writing it down, so she recited it in her head. The night fell, and she waited for the sound of his slow, steady breathing. Carefully, heart pounding, she slipped from the bed. It wasn't just fear overwhelming her, but humiliation. That she'd missed the red flags for all the ways he'd come to betray her and River. But it wasn't the thing to focus on right now. Danny was not a heavy sleeper. She crept around the room, gathering the most essential things. A change of clothes, keys, shoes, duffel bag, cash. She glanced at Danny sleeping and quietly slid a pair of scissors into the bag. Across the hall, she put River's things in the bag, slung it over her shoulder, and scooped the girl out of bed into her arms. River began to stir. "Mommy, hush, baby, we need to be real quiet because Daddy's asleep. We can't wake him." If her daughter blew this escape, she could not guarantee either of their lives would end well. River put her head sleepily against her chest as she carried the child and the bag outside. She threw the bag into the back seat, strapped River into her car seat, and floored it, looking behind repeatedly, relieved to see the dark road empty behind her. It was an hour before she dared to stop. The light from the rest stop prompted River to stir. "Where are we, Mummy?" River suddenly asked. The mother looks at her precious daughter We're going to see the family, remember? But where is Daddy? Don't worry about Daddy right now, love. She gazed at her beautiful daughter, regarding those curls she adored. She didn't want to have to cut her hair, but she needed to if they were going to succeed at this. In the rest stop bathroom, she snipped the last of River's lovely hair, then started on her own. Arms up, she said, and River obeyed, allowing her to put her in the white gown and shoes. We look silly, River said. We look holy, the mother corrected. She prayed that God would forgive. They were supposed to have done the hair-cutting ritual 3 days ago, as a required cleansing before the migration. Before, Danny had approached her and said he was having doubts about their faith. Before, he had questioned his infinity bread of the moon's motivations and refused to give the payment to migrate to the next realm. Before, he'd turned his back on the light and tried to keep River from it too, threatening to leave and gain custody if this talk of the migration continued. So she played along, suppressing her horror at his apostasy until she could make their escape. They walked toward the encampment, and she smiled at the sight of hundreds of other people, the family, clad in white gowns, ready to go and be with God. She took the cup of potion she was handed, took a sip, and then with a smile, handed it to River. There's something wrong with my daughter. Right from birth, I could see it. When she was crawling out of her mother's womb, wrapped in a film of blood, while doctors puffed and pushed down on her belly. She did not cry. Everybody thought she wasn't breathing. Rather, she stared back up at me and smiled. Do babies smile at their fathers when they first come into the world? Her smile creeped me out, and I shivered. Then I noticed 3 black sixes tattooed on her forehead, intertwining like a nest of baby snakes. My heart ran cold. Did I just help give birth to the Antichrist? Maybe it was just my imagination. Hopefully. Everybody said my daughter, Penny, was as cute as a button by the time she was 4. She had a squashed face and baby blue eyes. Except when those eyes looked at me, they were cold, steel. And the birthmark. It floated in front of my face, unwavering. I always found her in the weirdest places too. Playing with matches or lighter, trying to set something on fire, for example. Once I cut her with a rat. The rat's eyes bulged, and it squeaked in agony as she strangled it to death with a smile on her face. Her kindergarten would call me too, saying she never wanted to play with the other kids or even talk to them. Instead, she preferred to spend all her time reading, not nursery rhymes or picture books, but the works of H.P. Lovecraft from the teacher's desk. While I was proud of my daughter's very advanced reading skills for her age, I was also worried about her. Why couldn't I have a normal daughter? The final straw was when I was playing with her. I tickled her belly, knowing how much she loved that. Penny giggled, her fists flailed, hit me right on the nose. My nose cracked, and blood came whooshing out, fast and furious, like water gushing out from a broken dam. I shrieked and ran to find a tissue to stem the blood, and by the time I found one, my head was spinning. Penny just giggled. How could a freaking 4-year-old be that strong? That was it. She is the curse upon this world. With God's will, I must stop her. I staggered to the kitchen and found a sharp knife. Yelling a prayer of faith to God, I plunged the knife straight into the wretched girl's heart. Penny squealed like a pig. "What are you doing?" My wife was standing there, her face pale as a sheet. Penny was as limp as a rag doll in my arms. There was blood everywhere. She was trembling as she pulled out her phone, nearly dropping it. "Hello, police. There's a dead body in the house." I was still numb with shock myself, my mind trying to process what just happened. Then the body in my lap twitched. A tiny hand grabbed the knife from me. She waved it against my throat and just giggled. Somebody is going to kill my mother. I know they are. I know they are because they've been leaving notes about it in my diary. Lists of household objects they could use. A kitchen knife, a screwdriver, a bookend. I know they are because these instruments of harm and death are left scattered around our house. Set down on the hallway end table, haphazardly tucked into the linen closet, even laying on the ground impotently in front of her bedroom door, as though the aggressor forced themselves to drop the weapon and flee at the last minute. I know they are, because she is not a well-liked woman. People see the way she speaks to her daughter, and all goodwill they harbor for her flies from their body like a soul leaving a corpse. They see a teenage girl with red-rimmed eyes from crying all day, skeletal and lethargic from starving herself. They overhear her call me names like loser and retard. They may even hear her telling me awful things about my father, whom I never met. How he was an abusive predator with a drug problem, and the horrors he would inflict on her. The unspoken subtext, of course, being that I am an extension of him and a reminder of her abuser. An unwanted souvenir from a time in her life that she would rather forget. Someone is going to kill my mother. I know they are, because it has to be one of us. We can't live under the same roof anymore. I know people see it. I know they know. And we all know I can't live like this anymore. I know they are, because, as she has reminded me hundreds of times over, I am the daughter of a wicked, wicked man. Intrinsically tied to him, whether I wish to be or not. Someone is going to kill my mother tonight. I know they are, because that someone is me. I've walked these halls so long, I can traverse them with my eyes closed. I might as well, there isn't much to see. Stained concrete and iron bars, the imagery isn't subtle. I wonder how long I've been here, then if it matters. Time doesn't seem to exist in this place. My stomach cramps with hunger. I haven't eaten in so long, and still, I don't starve. My limbs ache from exhaustion, and yet I can't sleep. If I pause for even a second, the maze punishes me, lacerating me with spikes, or chasing me with rabid dogs. It's hard to remember what came before. My last memory is a dingy room and a needle in my arm. At first, I was flying. Then, I was falling into an abyss. I'm nearly to the end of the maze, again. All I have to do is turn the corner. And there she is. The end is a vast throne room, and sitting smugly on a raised golden chair is my judge. She wears the clothes she died in, stained with her own blood. Her face is still baby round, and she wears glasses, though I doubt she needs them anymore. I teased her for both back in the day. Behind her rise gold and pearl gates, glowing like a beacon. My heart leaps every time I see them. Took you long enough, she says. I stop before her, trail of bloody footprints behind me. I hold out my hands. Please, I whisper, my throat raw. I'm sorry. I wish I could take it all back. I wish I had died in your place. Please, will you let me through? She smirks as she studies me. I really didn't know how much I was hurting her. I was young. Everyone was cruel to each other. I didn't think of myself as a bully. When word of her suicide went around the school, I was ashamed. I'd driven her so far. No, that's a lie. I was too worried someone would find the notes in my handwriting, or the online accounts tied to my phone. I was too worried about myself to think about her at all. And now here she is, the one thing between me and passing beyond. When I reached the end, the first time she'd explained it to me, I was dead. I wasn't good enough to go right to heaven, but not quite evil enough to end up in hell. Instead, I was in a place of penance. When I was finally remorseful enough, I would pass on. And she, the person I'd wronged the most deeply during life, would decide when that was. Please, I whisper, blood on my tongue. She smiles at me, light glinting off her glasses. No, she says. So, when I awake again, I'm back at the beginning. Too parched to cry, I stumble to my feet and start the maze all over again. I finish work every night at 9, and he is always there waiting for me. My chaperone, Samuel. He kindly walks me home through the muttering darkness and the twitching light of the twisted lamp posts. We talk about things, what I've done, what customers annoyed me, but especially what books I'd read. He tells me he used to love reading in the past, but he doesn't get the time now. Romantic stories are our favorites. He misses the comfort of love, while I dream of having it. I know I'm not a catch. I'm short and dumpy. Samuel tells me I'm the best of everything and not to lower my expectations just because I feel lonely. Most people are afraid of waiting too long for the right person, but time lasts longer than you think. Before we met, I used to think he was stalking me. I reported it to the police, but the CCTV didn't show anything. One day, he was waiting for me outside the shop. However, I didn't feel scared. He said he was sorry if he'd caused me any concern, but said that he was making sure I was safe. The way home was full of dark corners, and it made him feel human again. To do this one good act each night. Samuel is hard to describe because he hides so much of himself. He says it is a punishment he wasn't given any choice in. If sadness could manifest, Samuel would be the result. Our walk home is full of laughter though. I used to be terrified of walking home, but it's now my favorite part of the day. He tells me little stories about his past, about his wife and children, whose ashes have long since joined the clouds. I know he misses them, but he prefers to recall the silly things they all did together. I hear noises on the walk home of things recoiling and retreating in Samuel's presence. He says that while I am with him, they will not harm me. I have asked him before what these things are, and he replied cryptically that they are the damage left behind when bad people die. Tonight we talked about a book I had read called The Rainy Season. Samuel was captivated as always, asking questions about the characters and about how I felt while reading it. I told him I felt upset as the book was about grief and death. Samuel chuckled with that weird laugh of his and said that I should read something more cheerful. A good romance, in fact. When I arrive home, Samuel wishes me a good evening and scuttles back into the shadows. I asked him once where he went afterwards, and he told me it was better if I didn't know. He was worried that we wouldn't be friends any longer. I feel he does something terrible when he's not with me, but it doesn't matter. He will always be my best friend. My life has been rough lately. The usual bullying, parents being bossy, and relationship issues. I couldn't take it for much longer, so I decided to go to a fortune teller. She was a lovely lady. She told me that I'd live a long and happy life, that I'll have a wonderful family, etc., etc. The thing that shocked me the most was what mattered most in the end will come soon. It got me wondering, what does matter? What will happen when it's revealed? What does matter most? It's been a couple months since then, and it still hadn't come true. I don't think it will happen. It's puzzling. It's making me go mad. But then it came to me. I would have to murder all my enemies. I would have a happy life then. That's what she had predicted. The bullies, my parents, my partner. I would have to kill them all. I find a pretty sharp knife, and I got on the hunt. First were my parents. They were easy to find. After all, I still lived with them. So that was an easy kill. Nice and quiet. Next were the bullies. Jesse, Danny, Andrew, all gone. But they had a will to live. I didn't care. They'll all die. Finally, after some tormenting struggle, they gave up. Last was my partner, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I loved her. She loves me, her boyfriend. I can't do this. She deserves to live. I won't do it. I can't do it. She's going to live. She will live. We can grow old together and make a family. But what if she finds out? If she does, I won't know what to do. Kill her? No, I love her. Kill myself? No, then she'd be sad. I guess I would just hide from the world. I truly wish she doesn't find out. I killed her brother. How would she not? She'd hate me if she found out. She'd turn me in. But she hasn't yet. This will be my little secret. It's been years since then. We have a wonderful family now. 2 little girls and a little boy, triplets. She's happy. I'm happy. We got married. We work things out. Oh no. No, 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 no. They found out. I forgot they could potentially find the bodies. And they have. What will I do? I hid them in my parents' house. I can't let my family find out. I should have found a better hiding spot. Not my childhood home. What if they find out who killed them all? What if they arrest me? No, I can't let my kids grow up without a father. They're only 3. They can't ask their mother where their daddy was. I can't let that happen. I'll have to kill them. The cops. If they lay a finger on my family, I'll kill them all. They'll all be gone. No one is going to touch my family. After all, they are what matter most in the end. 45. That's how many people are left. We started with 111, and he just kept killing and killing until we got here. Exits to the building are all locked and cannot be opened, nor broken. This demon, or whatever he is terrorizing us. We figured out that the only way he can kill you is if he senses fear, but some people learned that too late. There is no safe place to hide, and he can see us, no matter where we are. It's just a matter of who's the most frightened at the time he chooses to hunt. One man was able to look the demon in the eyes and deter him, but he hasn't been the same since. It was in the beginning. 2 days ago, the building's power went out, and everyone left their apartment to see what was happening. There we were, searching around in the dark to try and see what was happening, when a quiet jingling of a bell could be heard in the darkness. My floor went from a silent, dark void to a screaming pit of hell. Within seconds, the demon killed 10 of us just on that floor alone. After witnessing such a horrible event, the survivors on my floor and I went to search the other floors to see if the same thing happened there. We were still shaking and barely able to breathe, but what else were we to do? We gathered up the 84 of us left and went to the lobby to hopefully find someone who could help. Nothing but bloody corpses filled the lobby. This caused us to produce enough fear for the demon to strike again. Ding, 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 went the bells. Screaming commenced again before the lights suddenly turned on, and the survivors and I all stared at one man. He was just standing there, staring the demon in the face like he was just some lame circus clown. The lights flickered, and the demon was gone, but the lights remained on this time. Seconds later, the man fell to the floor, and we didn't know if he was dead or just fainted. We looked around again, and realized there were fewer of us left than before. The man eventually woke up, but he hasn't spoken since the attack. After that event, we took notice of how fear caused the demon to attack, and tried to remain calm at all times. 2 days passed, and the demon began to attack, even when we were calm, to try and make us fear him. It worked for a lot of us, but I somehow have managed to survive. With 45 people remaining, we fear that we will never make it out alive. That damn jingling. I can't tell if I'm actually hearing it now or if I'm just traumatized by it. It's not just the demon itself that's scary. It's the empty darkness and the sound of the bells as you wait for what is going to happen next. Ding, ding, ding. My family are all tea drinkers. Grandma likes the kind that smells nice with lots of honey. Daddy likes the kind that smells terrible and I'm not supposed to have because it'll keep me up all night. And Mommy likes her special homemade tea. No one else in the family likes that tea. Daddy and Grandma refused to let me try it. I still wanted to see what the fuss was about, even though I don't like most tea. Mommy's tea is her favoriteest thing. She drinks a cup of it in the morning and again in the evening. Once I woke up and found her drinking it a whole lot in the middle of the night. She gets weird without her tea, scary weird. Her tea is bright reddish orange, but smells so strongly like flowers that it almost hurts. The neighbors like coming over to have some of the tea. Sometimes they come every single day. Mommy gets money from them each time. She says that it's good to get extra money for us, even if it's ill-gotten. She tells the neighbors that she makes the tea from things in the garden. Then she tells me to go play in the garden, while the grown-ups talk about grown-up things. I used to like playing in the garden, but it got boring when my friends disappeared. I wondered what was really in Mommy's tea. I knew it was from the garden, but I was never allowed to eat anything I found there. A little while ago, I decided to sneak into the tea room, which was where Mommy made the tea and where I wasn't ever supposed to go. I still went in though, because not knowing was driving me crazier and crazier. I snuck into the room at just past midnight. When I opened the creaky door, I certainly didn't expect to see what I saw. The room was dark, lined with shelves, and had a big table in the middle. All over the table and the shelves were big old books and small old jars. And inside the jars were little dolls. At least, I thought they were dolls. I was scared, but looked closer anyway. They weren't dolls. The one I looked at was green, and had big black buggy eyes. It had tiny claws and hair that looked like petals from a flower in the garden. I thought it was dead, because of how curled up it was, but then it looked up at me. It opened its mouth and banged on the glass. One of its legs was missing. It looked kind of like one of my little friends I used to have. I wanted to free it, but I was too scared for my hands to move. Instead, I snuck away. Mommy had people over again. As I crept back to my room, I heard her bragging about her secret ingredient, coming from nature. I suppose nothing was more natural than my little friends, and I decided I would never drink tea again after that. Do you ever have dreams from real life? Dreams about what people tell you? I do. And these nightmares will never end. This one client had snapped and shaken his son until he died. The child had smeared plum baby food all over himself, his high chair, and the wall near him. He did it intentionally, just to infuriate me, he'd said. He sat on my couch and fumed, angry again, just over the memory of what his son had done. I asked him what had happened next, where his baby's body was, and he just gave me a smirk and said, "Let's just say I know people. Do you really want to hear more?" Not really, so I didn't pry. One day, a college girl told me that she and her fellow sorority sisters had hazed another girl, had forced her to strip naked and jump off the pier on an icy winter night 1 year ago. The pledge had never surfaced, and the girls made a pact not to tell anyone. The family was still looking for their daughter. "I just feel so horrible," she said, in uncontrollable tears. It was my job to read emotions, and hers were genuine. I thought of that girl's family, but they weren't my clients. One man trickle-trued me. He had had fantasies about what it would be like to die during sex. Then he confessed it wasn't him dying per se, but the woman. A prostitute woman. Her body felt so good that he didn't notice she was dead. He did notice. He noticed because he was the one who strangled her. I nodded along, my face neutral. I asked him questions to get to the root of this, but it was clear that every question I asked simply gave him the opportunity to spill more and more obscene details. I was a part of his scene. It went on. A middle-aged client had burned down an elementary school decades prior as a teenage prank. They had known the after-school program was in session. It added to the fun, he said. 22 children had perished that day. A state-level politician told me about how he'd paid someone to make his illegitimate child disappear. Thankfully, they weren't always gruesome. But the banality was awful too. Like the Christian mom who was concerned about the gay boy in her son's soccer team. So she'd rallied a petition to get him kicked out on the basis of violating the private school's code of conduct. She'd gathered a critical mass of signatures and won. I wondered what that boy would carry going forward. One woman lit up talking about the argument she'd gotten into with a coworker who had insisted that children should not be beat senseless. She talked about how her parents had beat her so hard and so frequently that she'd asked God why, and how she would cry in her bed. But now she knew it was the only way you raise strong children. Mandatory reporting meant that there was nobody to tell to address the past, nor the hypothetical. I'm not saying I don't want to do this job anymore. Sometimes I just wish that they would stop. Anna knew something was wrong as soon as she stepped foot in their apartment. Sam hadn't been answering her calls, but his truck was out front and the lights were on inside. "Samuel," she called out, staying near the front door. In the dining room, she could hear the tearing of duct tape, the snipping of scissors. "Might wanna stay over there for the moment, hun," he replied, his voice slightly muffled. "Or maybe go for a drive or something." She was inclined to listen, but too concerned to leave. "Sam, what's going on?" she asked. "Oh, I'm trying to figure that out for myself," he laughed, pulling more duct tape off the roll. "There's a whole mess over here, and it's kinda hard to explain. Best thing you could do right now is let me handle it." Anna didn't buy it. Sam never hid anything from her. She balled her fist, the keys jutting out between her fingers, and stepped towards the dining room doorway. "If you insist," Sam called out, clearly hearing her approach. Entering the doorway, Anna was confused at first. Sam had his back to her, sitting at the table, holding a pair of scissors in one hand, while looking down at his phone. Through the blood and shaking hand, Anna could see only that the camera was on the phone screen, in selfie mode. Sam had duct tape wrapped around the top of his head and near his neck, and he was laughing to himself, laughing at what he saw on the screen. Before him, on the table, was a body of a man, dressed in the same clothes that Sam was wearing. A blue and black checkered shirt and jeans, and there was a towel on his head. The towel was soaked in blood, and a red puddle had formed around the upper half of the man's body. "Who is that?" Anna asked, cocking her arm back in case she needed to defend herself. Sam gestured to the bloody corpse's head. "That's the question I'm trying to answer, but frankly, you're distracting me." "I can confirm that it's not me, though. It can't be." "How?" Anna asked, though she was sure she could answer that question herself. Sam turned in his chair, looking back at her, through a mask of bloodied flesh, carved from the face of the dead man before him. Flaps of skin were held in place by tape, pieced together like some gruesome jigsaw puzzle. "It's a facade, you see," he explained, holding a hand up to the patchwork mask. "It doesn't fit." "It will all be over soon. That's what I keep telling myself. To be honest, that's all I can do right now. The chemicals are already working their magic on my legs. I can't move them anymore. That's not even factoring in all the spirits in my system. My vision is blurring, and the people moving around me have morphed into swirling blotches of various colors. Not that any of that matters. It will all be over soon. I don't quite remember when it started or why. Possibly when the market crashed and I lost everything I'd made. Or when I lost my job due to factors beyond my control. Boss chewed me out. So I left, but not before battering him to within an inch of his life. I always said I wouldn't go quietly. Or when my wife left me, took the kids, took the house, took everything from me. I don't remember when it started. I just know that I want it to end already. The drinks are starting to hit me real hard now. Vodka, gin, brandy, sake, even pure ethanol. As for drugs, you name it, I've taken it. Cocaine, heroin, meth, acid, weed, ecstasy, morphine, MDMA, all sorts. Found all the dark web shit that I could, using the connections I'd made. I can feel my body emptying itself in the seat I'm in. I'm sure it smells god-awful, but I don't give a damn. It will all be over soon. In my line of work, you tend to meet a lot of very bad people who do very bad things. What they do behind closed doors is none of your business, but over time, you get to know them and slowly become more and more involved. And if you do right by them, they'll treat you well in return. Oh, you favors, debts. So I called them all in. Had them whip up something special for me. I was sure they'd say no, but they came through. Said they understood. Said they'd be sad to see me go, but that I wouldn't be forgotten. The bomb weighs heavy on my chest, under my coat. My hand starts to ache, the switch gripped tightly in it. Dead man's switch. Morbid, but fitting. A dead man's switch. For a dead man. I can feel my eyelids getting heavy. Organs starting to fail. Grip weakening. It hurts. It hurts so much. The crowd around me grows louder, denser. I hear someone call out and ask if I repent. The words echo and bounce between my ears. If I had the strength, I'd probably tell them that I don't. Brilliant white covers my eyes. Blackness. It hurts. Oh, does it hurt? But the pain will be worth it. I just need to keep reminding myself. It will all be over soon. I'm not sure how to describe the phenomenon I just witnessed. My heart is pounding out of my damn chest right now, and I have no idea what to do. I just moved into this new town, and it's my first night here. Boxes are still everywhere, and basically nothing is unpacked. I managed to get the television mounted and set up with the Fire Stick, just to have some entertainment. I was laying on the couch watching cartoons, and I saw some movement outside. My living room had two large windows on either side of the television that face the side of my yard. Beyond that is a large patch of woods. Anyway, like I was saying, I was watching television and I saw something moving around in the woods. I couldn't tell what it was at first, and the light from the television was making it hard to see through the windows. But I definitely saw something. I knew that. Worrying that there might be a coyote or something already staking out my yard, I shined the flashlight into the woods. I swear I saw a flash of something, but I really didn't get a good look. Then, I remembered the house came with a surveillance system that is infrared, so they can see at night. I went to the laundry room, where its hard drive is, and hooked up my laptop. After messing around trying to find the files, I got it. I felt cold sweat on my back, when I loaded up the footage. In the moments just before I went out with the flashlight, there were tens, maybe hundreds of eyes looking at me through the trees. Eyes mess with the air sensors, so the faces were impossible to see, but from the ones closest, I could definitely tell they were humans. Or at least, human-shaped. When I went out with my flashlight, they backed off. That's why I didn't see much. It's my first night in this place, and I don't know anyone. I don't have anyone to call. I don't have any weapons, besides a baseball bat, but even if I had a machine gun, there were so many. Are they coming from me? I'm currently locked in the laundry room with my laptop, showing me a live feed from the cameras. The eyes have reappeared, and they look like they're moving in closer. I'm going to stay in this room and hope they don't find me. They're at this house at this point. Many of them are looking through the windows, and a couple are trying to get the door open. I think this is going to be the first and last night in my new house. Eugene wiped his brow with a handkerchief, then glanced at his watch. It was nearing dinner time, the worst time to try selling door to door. No one liked having their meal interrupted. And yet, he had to try. 2 weeks, and he hadn't sold a single set of encyclopedias. If he didn't make a sale today, he was out of the job. Every door he knocked on was slammed in his face. His feet were sore, and his arm ached from carrying the heavy briefcase. The sun was beginning to set as he knocked on the last door. Even he could feel the fragility of his smile as a woman answered. "Hello, ma'am," he said, words so familiar, he spoke without thinking. "Do you have a few moments too?" To his surprise, her expression brightened. "Oh, thank goodness. I was worried you wouldn't make it in time." "You were?" Eugene asked, as she pulled him inside. Holding him by the arm, she strode through the living room. "Of course," she said, "it's nearly dinner time, you know." Nothing made sense, but pushed to his limit, Eugene was willing to play along, if it meant making a sale. "Would you like to discuss purchasing a set over dinner, then?" The woman paused, looking surprised. Then she laughed. "I doubt you'll be doing much talking. Come on, it's this way." She led him down a set of darkened stairs, tugging him upright when he stumbled. At the bottom lay a dirt floor with a circle of candles. Within were inscribed symbols that seemed to shift in the flickering firelight. "Any minute now," she said, though he wasn't sure if she was speaking to him. A chill settled in the room, raising the hair along the back of his neck. The candles dimmed, then suddenly erupted into towering flames, their light red, their heat stifling. The symbols began to glow until Eugene was forced to close his eyes. When he opened them, blinking away after images, there stood an enormous being, its horns nearly scraping the ceiling, its hooved legs covered in coarse hair. Blazing eyes turned to him as the creature opened its mouth.
"Is this your offering, mortal?"
"Sure is." The woman shoved Eugene, sending him sprawling into the circle. Trembling, Eugene looked up to find the creature bending over him, the fanged grin stretching impossibly wide. Behind him, the stairs creaked, and he heard the woman saying, "Try not to leave any leftovers this time. They're a pain to clean up." Officer Grady approached the parked vehicle slowly, carefully. The black Camry was below a street light. Its lights were off. There appeared to be only one person inside, a woman, small to medium build. Probably no danger, but the city was on edge these days. Caution was in order. He motioned for the driver to lower her window. Instead, she opened the door, and he took a step back, a long stride, hand on his holster. "Sorry, the window doesn't work," she said. "The car's completely dead." "No problem. Can you step out, please?" She stood beside the car, and he took down her information. Lydia Corcoran, address about 3 miles away, toward the western suburbs. "Have you called for assistance?" he asked. My phone hit 1% and shut off. I was planning to recharge at home. And then, he looked at the car, then back at her. Two things going wrong at once always made him look more closely at the situation. But she seemed like she was not a threat. Her posture seemed more nervous than aggressive. "What I can do, Mom, is take you to Franconi's Towing, about a mile from here. You can arrange to get the car to where you need it. Then, since you live close by, I'll drop you off at your home. Make sure you get inside safely. If all goes well, by tomorrow, you'll be back on the road. Would you like that?" She noticeably relaxed. Arms, shoulders, expression. "Yes, thank you so much. I didn't know what to do. Are you able to lock your car?" "I think so, with the key." She tried that, jiggled the handle, and it worked. He opened the back door of the cruiser. "I can't ride in front?" she asked. "You seem like a nice lady, but not everyone is. For fairness and safety, we have to treat everyone the same way. If you're not cuffed, you're not under arrest, and always free to go." "Okay." She stepped inside, and he closed the door for her. He got in front and pulled away from the curb. "You did the right thing back there," he said. "Stay in your vehicle and wait for a police officer. The city's not that safe these days." "I know, it seems like every night there's another murder," she said. "Yes, almost," he replied. 83 this year so far, more than twice last year. What many people don't know is that 55 of them are from the same suspect." "What, a serial killer?" she asked, surprised. "Yup, and we would all sleep safer if he was behind bars. But some of the people he works with are covering up for him, really hindering the investigation." Dumbfounded, she asks, "What kind of company would help a killer? Where does he work?" He chuckled. "Why, he's a cop, of course." His eyes were on the road. But he could hear Lydia fumbling, yanking, and finally slamming the door handle, trying in vain to get out. "By the way, those unlock only from the outside." Have you ever heard the phrase, "unmoored by grief"? It sounds extravagant, almost fake, overselling its intention. Even as a teen, I didn't think it was possible for anybody to feel anything so intensely. One afternoon, my brother's son just never woke up. He was only 6 months old. My grandmother talked about how God took his purest angels directly to join him at his throne. They wouldn't have to audition on earth for his favor like the rest of us. My sister-in-law, who found him, blamed the cat. She calmly picked up their 8-year-old Tom, who'd known and trusted her his entire life, and drowned him in the bathtub. That's what my brother came home to. She was committed to a psychiatric hospital for 28 months. My brother, admirably, stood by her. When I proposed, he confided in me, I told her that I'd loved her all my life, but just hadn't met her yet, the real her. It was like magic, an absolute certainty, like something I'd never known. He scoffed at himself, staring to the distance. It's corny, I know, but it's true. He was a shattered husk, so I wasn't going to argue about how idiotic he sounded. I loved him, so I supported him. But I didn't think I'd ever understand that depth of feeling. I had Melissa 4 years ago. My sister-in-law blocked me on social media when I announced the news, and smashed the window of my car in the hospital parking lot. I declined to press charges because I wanted to get my baby home. And I knew what everyone else in the family did. She never recovered. I love my daughter, but not like my sister-in-law loved her son. Being a single mom is demanding enough. I didn't have the energy for her negativity. I was financially secure enough, finally, to give Melissa the birthday party she deserved when she was 4. Balloons, bouncy castle, clown, big cake, the works. Because her birthday was on a Wednesday, we celebrated it that Sunday. When I sent invites, my sister-in-law exploded. This was the date her son had died. How dare I? To be honest, I'd forgotten. It was a horrible memory, and I'd shut it out. I apologized, but she called me a bitch. So I blocked her. I had to feed 14 kids and a clown. I was taking a break from the kidmare in the powder room when I heard a commotion in the kitchen. When I got there, my daughter, Melissa, was on the floor, purple face with eyes bulging and red. Cake stuffed down her windpipe. Suffocated, dead. My sister-in-law stood over my daughter, rest of the birthday cake in her hands. She looked at me, face blank. I had to. I need someone else to know how it feels. I padded over to her, shocked, then hugged her tight. Thank you, I whispered. She recoiled. What? I started to cry. I'm finally free. I pushed her away, composed myself, then began to scream.
Please subscribe, or the toxic skull will come for you.